Welcome back to All This Math. This is Professor Parker. Make sure that you like this video. Make sure you share this video with somebody. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Now, what are we doing today? Today, we are factoring out a GCF, and this is our expression, right? We're going to factor out a GCF from this expression. What is a GCF? GCF is an acronym that stands for Greatest Common Factor. Greatest Common Factor, all right? Now, we can find the greatest common factor with straight numbers or whole numbers, which is something you may have done in elementary school, or we can find a GCF of an algebraic expression. In this case, a binomial. This is referred to as a binomial. Why? Because the prefix bi means two, and this has two terms. 12m is the first term, 60 is the second term. 12m plus 60. All right, so how do I start? Well, this is what I do when I'm doing problems like this, or when I'm teaching people how to do problems like this. I start with the coefficients. My coefficients are 12 and 60, right? Now, some might say, well, 60 is not a coefficient because there's no variable next to it. But we could imagine that this was 60m to the 0 power. And m to the 0 power is equivalent to positive 1, thus changing the way it will look, but not changing the value of the expression. So I'm going to still think of 60, even though it's a constant, I'm going to think of it as a coefficient in that regard. So out of 12 and 60, what is the GCF of 12 and 60? That's the first question. All right, so I'm going to write down GCF. And the GCF of 12 and 60 is 12. If you at this level doing these types of problems in like an Algebra 1 class, probably, you got to already know how to find a GCF of regular numbers, of whole numbers. You got to already know that. You got to bring that to the table. When you get into these math classes, you got to bring certain things to the table. Fortunately for you, if you don't already know how to do that, I got a playlist on my channel, on this channel right here, that you should be subscribed to, right? Which addresses how to find the GCF of numbers. It's called Factors and Multiples. That's the name of the playlist where I have videos detailing how to find the GCF of numbers, like 12 and 60. Now, why is 12 the GCF? Because 12 is the greatest number, or the biggest number, that can multiply into both 12 and into 60. Because what is 12 times 1? 12 times 1 equals 12. What is 12 times 5? 12 times 5 equals 60. 12 is the biggest number. Now, does 3 also multiply into 12 and 60? Yes. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 20 is 60. But that ain't as big as 12. 3 is less than. 3 is not the greatest. What about 6? 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 10 is 60. That ain't the greatest because 12 is bigger, right? So that's why we call it the greatest. The G stands for greatest, the greatest common factor, right? And what they got in common. And is it a factor? In this case, 12 is a factor of 12 and 60. And it's something that these two numbers have in common, right? It's a common factor, something they share. You know what I'm saying? Something they share. All right. So now this problem is a little different from some of the ones that you'll see, because in a lot of problems you'll see, you can find the common factor of the coefficients, and then you can find the common factor of the variables. But notice how only 12m has an m. 60 don't have an m written, right? Regardless of what I said in the beginning about m to the 0 power, right? This does not have an m written. So what does that mean? That means m is not common. M ain't common because they don't both got m's. So that means m ain't common. It's not a common factor. Therefore, the GCF is just 12. Many examples that you will encounter will have a GCF which includes a coefficient, a numerical coefficient, as well as a variable portion or a variable component. This is not that. Or I'd rather say this ain't that and that ain't this. All right. So the GCF is just 12, right? It's just 12. Now, how do we factor this to completion? What we do is we're going to put our equal sign and we write the GCF, which is 12. Then we write parentheses, a set of parentheses. Now, something's going to go inside these parentheses. What though? Oh, the quotient. When you divide each of these by the GCF, each of these by the GCF, each of these by 12, which is the GCF. So 12m divided by 12 is just m. 60 divided by 12 is positive 5. So you write plus 5. That's the final answer. 12 times the quantity m plus 5. This can't be factored any further. All right. Sometimes you'll have a situation where the expression inside the parentheses can be factored again. And then maybe when you factor that, you might still be able to factor that again, right? Or those expressions again. But this ain't that. This is just 12 times the quantity m plus 5. This is what we call factored completely, because you can't simplify this anymore. You can't factor a common factor out of m and 5, and there aren't any other methods of factoring that we can use to factor this any further. All right. And again, where did this m come from? Let me show it to you. Let me show you where the m came from. The m came from this, right? You take the original term 12m divided by 12. What's 12 divided by 12? 12 divided by 12 is 1. Is 1. Now m is there. There's no variable to divide it by, so you just keep it there with the 1. Now 1, notice that there's no 1 written right here, because you never need to write the 1 when it's the coefficient. That's part of just algebraic language. You don't got to write that. If 1 is your coefficient, you don't got to write it. If 1 is your denominator, you don't got to write it. If 1 is your exponent, you don't got to write it. That's part of the language of mathematics, more specifically the language of algebra that you just got to know. You got to know the language, right? You got to know the language, right? As I stand here with my Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. t-shirt on, you got to know the language. All right. So this 1 does not need to be written, even though it is embedded within the term m, right? If you write an m, you know that that's 1m, because how many m's is it? It's 1. It's not 2 m's. It's not 3 m's. It's not 4 m's. It's not 8 m's or 25 m's. It's just m. All right. And then where the 5 come from? 60 divided by 12. I'm not writing that down. I'm not writing that down. You don't need me to write that down. All right. So yeah. So sometimes a variable will be part of your GCF. Sometimes it won't. All right. So your GCF is 12. You still follow the same process. You divide each term by the GCF, take those quotients, put them inside the parentheses, and you're done. All right. So go get some practice with these problems, factoring out a GCF of an algebraic expression, whether it's a binomial, trinomial, 4-term polynomial, whatever, right? Make sure you are very well versed with Dr. King. Oftentimes, people complain that every Black History Month, all we learn about is Dr. King. But I would submit this. A lot of us really don't learn about Dr. King. They give us the same, what they actually do in a lot of schools, public schools, charter schools, even private schools, is give you the same recycled information, basic information about Dr. King every single year. They don't get into the 3 books that he wrote, right? Stride Toward Freedom, right? That was written after the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955. Why We Can't Wait, which came, I forget when that was published, but that was some years after that. And then his final book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, his third and final book. They don't get into all that. They don't get into Letter from a Birmingham Jail in school, in many schools. Maybe your school did get into Letter from a Birmingham Jail that he wrote. That's included in his second book, Why We Can't Wait, right? So there's a lot of information. Also, there's biographical information about King that a lot of schools don't get into. So even though King, his name is very popular, a lot of us don't really know about him. So please go invest in his books, right? Read his books, listen to his speeches, not just the I Have a Dream speech. Anybody that studies King knows that the I Have a Dream speech is probably one of his most mediocre speeches. King has some very thorough speeches. His Vietnam War speech is one of them. I'm gonna straight tell you that. His Vietnam War speech, even the I've been to the mountaintop speech, or the speech, I think that was the speech the night before when he was in Memphis. He was out in Memphis, right? The night before he got assassinated in April 1968. That was another dope speech, but he has so many speeches. So do your research on King, get some practice on this, and I'll see y'all on the next video. Peace.